Stop thinking of AI as a replacement of humans and start thinking of it as a tool to elevate the human experience.
Welcome to Innovate or Evaporate, the podcast where we explore the relentless pace of change and the innovators who drive it. Each episode, we dive deep into cutting-edge ideas, breakthrough technologies, and the fearless pioneers reshaping our world. Today's guest is Amy Brown, founder and CEO of Authenticx, a company using AI to help healthcare organizations listen to the people they serve. In this conversation, Amy shares her courageous leap from corporate executive to founder, the scrappy early days of building with empathy, and why some of the best innovation comes from listening, not leading. She also breaks down what it means to build trust in tech, how vulnerability shapes company culture, and why you don't have to know everything to get started. If you're ready to rethink what leadership looks like in the age of AI, stay tuned, because it's Innovate or Evaporate.
Welcome back to Innovate or Evaporate. I'm your host, Toph Day. We are joined by Amy Brown. She is the founder and CEO of Authenticx, a healthcare-focused customer insights platform leveraging AI to analyze and elevate the voice of the customer. Her background spans public policy, operations, and strategic planning with a strong focus on improving customer experience. Inspired by the untapped potential of customer interaction data, she founded Authenticx in 2018, leading the company through significant growth, including a $20 million Series B funding in 2023. Amy, welcome to the show.
Thank you.
This is going to be an awesome discussion today. On your LinkedIn, I noticed it says, on a mission to help humans understand humans. Let's start there for a moment, because that sounds deep.
It's deep, it's audacious, it might be a little crazy, actually. The thought of humans really, truly understanding humans. But yeah, that's really what we intend to do, using AI to help make the listening to understand process much easier for people in corporate America.
So I heard you say once, and this is going to be the cliffhanger for a little bit later. I heard you say something. I watched you speak, I think it was about a year ago. I can't remember what event it was at. And you said something that hit me really hard, but we're going to come to that later. But let's back up. So what does Authenticx, just so the listeners know, what does Authenticx do?
So we are a native AI company. We started building AI models in 2018. And what we do is use AI algorithms to find signals in mass amounts of conversation data. Conversation data is things like call recordings, chat files, emails, any kind of unstructured conversations. We are expert at taking all of that unstructured data and putting meaning around it and making it accessible and digestible for humans within the healthcare industry, that's the industry we serve, to really understand what their customers' perspectives are regarding their experience with the company. And if we all believe that perception is everything, then customers' perceptions is really the reality of most companies' business, right? And if you don't understand what people perceive about their experience with you, then you're missing a huge channel of insight that'll help you do better in business and also serve customers.
So you were doing AI before AI was cool.
Yes. In fact, we were doing AI before anybody knew what it was. And so we were having to spend a ton of time educating our buyer. And we even came up with words that were not using the AI so that we could help people try to understand it. And then suddenly overnight,
yeah, everything's AI.
Yeah.
Got AI.
Exactly.
Yeah, AI all day, every day. That's too funny. So, all right. So I'm really excited today. We've had all different kinds of guests on the podcast, and we're starting to now get into entrepreneurs, right? And how they came up with their idea, like how they started, et cetera. And we have a saying here, we're looking for every innovation-driven entrepreneur from dorm room to boardroom. Mm-hmm. And you're kind of an example of the boardroom. And so you were in corporate before, right? And before that, in the state. So talk a little bit about that journey. What inspired you to become an entrepreneur? What are some of those things? Did anybody tell you were crazy?
Oh, yes. Yeah. I mean, I think there is a part of your DNA that makes you prone to entrepreneurialism. So I think that the innate kind of entrepreneurial spirit was embedded in who I am, from a very early age. My parents, my dad in particular was a physician, but a very entrepreneurial one. That said, if I hadn't had the experiences of being an employee and understood what it's like to manage people, understood what it's like to bring a brand to market, understood what it's like to negotiate and navigate board dynamics, I don't think I would have been an effective CEO for my venture. And so I think it's the combination of that innate kind of entrepreneurial spirit with the experience of 20 years of being an employee, working through the ranks of business that has allowed us to be a successful company. It was that experience in corporate that I learned the problem that I was most passionate about trying to solve. It's where I learned how to navigate different personalities. It's where I learned the fundamentals of business. And, being an entrepreneur of a startup is not just about having a great idea. It's about picking the right timing for that idea, marketing it right. And it's also about managing a culture and a people and all of those things. Like I never would have understood how to do effectively had I not had a career in advance of Authenticx.
So folks talk a lot about like corporate innovation, right? And a lot of corporations have started to have innovation groups or departments or something that maybe rides alongside, but it seems to be a struggle for corporations to actually innovate.
Yeah.
Right? A lot of times it's easier to acquire the innovation. This is like the age-old question. Like from your perspective, like why do you think it's difficult for corporations to innovate?
Because in order to truly innovate, you have to let go. You have to let go of mindset, of traditions, of old ways of doing things. And that's exceedingly hard for organizations that have high stakes in what they've already built. And even for myself, I had to quit my corporate career, completely start from scratch, from nothing, in order to build what is today Authenticx. And I don't think I could have effectively done that had I tried to maintain my salary, at corporate,
right.
In a corporate environment and do Authenticx on the side or as a side hustle. There's just no way. It takes too much commitment. When you are in the free fall of, starting from nothing, you have everything to lose. And therefore, failure is not an option. And you just work differently than you would if you were truly comfortable, with a core business or a salary.
Was there a moment, or was it a thought process over time, laying in bed at night, thinking about this idea for Authenticx? What was the what did you have to come to grips with as a human? Like I've made this decision, and I've thought about this thing, and all the ways it can succeed or fail. Right? Like, what was going through your mind to make that decision that I'm going to go for it, and this is an idea that the world needs?
Yeah, the process spanned about 2 years before, like when the first seed was planted and when I actually launched Authenticx. But I started taking it very earnestly about 6 months in advance of the date that I resigned from my corporate career. And in those 6 months, it involved conversations with mentors, trying out the idea, processing it out loud. It involved a lot of conversations with my husband and my children about lifestyle changes we would need to make because all of the money that mom was making was going to evaporate, and we needed to, to create a little nest egg that we were going to live off for about 18 months. It involved really visualizing what risk and rejection were going to feel like, because I knew that was going to be a big part of the experience of free falling into entrepreneurialism. And that was all super important work leading up to it. I can't describe it, Toph, other than like a deep, like spiritual even moment where I was like, okay, the time is now. It felt bigger than myself. And I had done all the work of like putting pen to paper and rationalizing the decision. But I didn't know that the time was right until I felt it in my soul. And I just knew that week that this was the week to start the company.
To
So
go
that's
for
what I
it.
did.
Jump off the proverbial cliff, right?
Yes, exactly.
So you're the founder, right?
Yes.
She did not have a co-founder.
I didn't.
So every CEO has different skill sets, right? Sales or operations or technical so what would you say your kind of core skill set is?
My career was mostly in the realm of COO type work. So I knew operations and how to scale a team. I would say that I also knew from hard lessons learned as an employee what I wanted a culture to look like and feel like. Not that in the first 18 months I would have a big enough team to to really build culture, but I knew what the founding values would need to be in order to have a team of people who were inspired by the mission, because I knew this had to be more than just employment. This had to be a calling for people. And then third, I'd say the problem that I wanted Authenticx to solve was a problem that I experienced as a business leader and someone who was buying technology. And I knew that problem so deeply that when I went to talk to my first prospective customers, I knew very well how to speak their language because I had been in their seat. And that was extremely helpful in the
critical.
The first stages of it.
So you're going to go build this product, right? You're going to build software. So how did you tackle that to get to the first MVP? Like, how did you go about it at first? Did you start building a product right away? Or did you go talk to some early potential customers you had relationships with and said, hey, I want to build this thing, and you maybe had a wireframe or something?
Yeah. My first goal was to prove to myself that the idea could sell, that someone would write a check and hand over money for us to deliver something of value to them. And so what I did was I bought a few licenses on a low-code platform. I paid for a contractor developer to build out that platform. It was not ours, but it was one that could be very easily configured. And our first paying customers gave us only a few hundred call recordings to begin with. And I listened to every one of them with my own ears. And I started creating the tags and labels that would soon become the foundation of our training data for our AI models. And so I started figuring out through listening to these conversations and through documenting them in the system and tagging and labeling them, I figured out what the core use cases needed to be, what the most compelling stories that customers were saying, and how to name them, how to find the patterns in the data, how to find, for example, patterns of disruption in a customer journey. And that's how I got started. And then about 18 months in, I hired our now CTO, Michael Armstrong, who really helped me look at the problem space and say, okay, we need to build native AI, and we're going to start with what you've got in terms of, these tags and labels. We're going to start building out our UI. We're going to start building out our machine learning models. And he really has taught me and Authenticx everything we know about what responsible AI looks like.
So what I love about this is we think about Elevate, we think about this concept of MELFO, like market, entrepreneur, legal, financial, operational. And so like you've already described out of the gate, like market, narrow and deep, right? Like solving, like providing a solution for real pain that you experienced, right, in the corporate world. And then from a team standpoint, finding that technical person, because you need that technical help. So then you start building your product. How did you scale from that first customer to like 10 customers? Like what were some of the things you learned that maybe you did and gosh, I wish I had done it differently?
Yeah. Our customers scaled themselves quickly. So the first few customers, one of them was a top 5 pharma manufacturer. I have no idea how I landed them. They're still a
because
customer
you're awesome.
Today. I must have been really good at sales in that very early stage of our business, but we were manually listening to several hundred interactions in January of 2019. And that was about, let's call it a south of $100,000 contracted annual contract value. The very next year in 2020, that single contract scaled to over $775,000. And it was because they were getting access to insights that they had never had before. And not only was it valuable for like their marketing and sales and commercial side of the house, but when you're listening to customer conversations, you can also hear what's not going right from a compliance perspective. And so what really led to the scale of that one client that year was the compliance leader said, oh my gosh, if we can use their solution to meet our compliance needs, not just the marketing and sales team's needs, then we've got a huge opportunity to mitigate risk for our business. And so what we learned was, gosh, there's something for everyone in conversation data. And it was those early clients that helped solidify the use cases, the different personas that would be interested in our product. And we really were delighted to kind of understand what all the problems that this particular data set could help solve.
And we'll come back to that secret that I heard you mention. And it sounds maybe simplistic, but it's not. And so what you said was that you not only hired the technical people to build the product, but that you also hired the people who live with the pain to inform the technical people kind of how to build the product. So you think about workflow, like how am I going to actually implement this into my workflow for a customer?
Yeah.
The customer standpoint. That is brilliant because a lot of companies don't do that. They don't bring in people who actually live the pain to work side by side with the team building the product. Or as even a fallback, go to the customer and sit beside them, right, as they use this new product. So talk about that. Like, how did you decide to do that? And I'm just curious, like, how did you come up with that? Because a lot of companies don't do that.
Thank you. My education is social work, and I came from a healthcare background. And so for me, like, people who work in that environment, who understand and live the pain every day, are going to be able to best articulate what problem we're actually trying to solve. And also, from an AI perspective, we wanted to build an AI solution that was actionable, specific, targeted at the healthcare industry. And developers and AI engineers and data scientists on their own that haven't had healthcare experience might not know what problems to go solve with AI. And so it was really the combination of an excellent technology team with people who have walked the walk in the healthcare world that came together to build, the use cases for our AI product. And they're still doing it today. We still have today a team of data labelers who are counselors, social workers, nurses, people who've worked in customer service for healthcare, who are partnering with our engineering team to really figure out what to listen for. I will say, though, thank you for saying it was brilliant. It's also super hard because, for your listeners who probably will get a chuckle out of this, they probably know, like, people who work in healthcare and people who are building AI aren't necessarily cut from the same cloth or coming from the same world. So talk about like humans understanding humans. We had to do that within our own four walls because we speak different languages. We come from different industries, and it's not been an easy venture in any way, shape, or form, but it's been a worthy one.
You mentioned earlier that before we started this podcast, that this on a mission to help humans understand humans was your kind of mission vision from day one, at the very outset.
Yeah.
And I think that's really powerful, right? Vision statements can change over the years. Every 5 or 10 years, companies can change those. But when you have that clarity, right, from day one, the alignment of your team and how you serve the customer becomes so much, not simpler, that's the wrong word, but definitely provides clarity,
Thank you. Yeah.
So now you've got some customers. You've proven that people want this thing. They're willing to write a check for it. So let's talk a little bit about the capital raising process. which is just a beautiful, fun journey for every entrepreneur.
Lots of fun.
So you did a Series B in 23. Let's go backwards to, what was your first fundraise like? Was it angels or what was that like? And how much did you raise? And if you look back at when you went and did that first raise, what did you just crush and what would you do differently to the entrepreneurs that are listening out there for them to be thinking about?
That first raise, I probably spoke to 80 to 100 different institutional investors. I did have a couple of angel investors, but the timing of when they invested and we just went for the institutional raise at the same time, it just rolled into one seed round.
Yep.
And so we raised about $1.2 million in that seed round.
And that was the first capital you raised was about 1.2?
Yes.
Yep.
It was 1.2 and it closed in March of 2020.
Nice.
So
Perfect timing.
A really fun time to raise. What I got right, I'd say two things that I learned from that. And when I talk to entrepreneurs who are doing this for the first time, having some revenue, some recurring revenue was extremely helpful.
Mm-hmm.
I'm really glad that we were able to get especially one particularly big name client because it kind of did the talking for me.
Yes.
Which was very, very helpful. I think the other thing is just when you're at that stage, they're making a bet on you, the entrepreneur.
Yep.
And so just demonstrating your expertise in your market, demonstrating your expertise with a problem and that you've nailed the right solution, or at least the idea of the right solution is really critical. But I had never raised before, never been in a venture-backed business before. And so I had so much to learn about the industry, about what was important to investors. And it was definitely a journey.
Well, is there anything you leaned on back in that time frame that you remember? Like whether it was people that you had met, throughout your life or your journey, or any books or publications or LinkedIn influencers, or was there anybody that you went to kind of help navigate how to get ready for that, how to prep for that?
Yes, I did a lot of talking with other founders who had been through it. That was probably one of the most helpful things I did because they could commiserate,
yes,
but also show me their version of a pitch deck.
Yep.
And I can't believe the generosity of fellow founders who had gone before me and were willing to open up their files and show me what worked and what was effective for them. I received lots of constructive feedback, which was super helpful. So I'd say that was probably the most helpful. But you talk to mentors, you read the books. What's the book that everybody reads?
For raising capital?
Yes.
Yeah, I have no idea.
Okay. Anyway, there's a book that
I never read that book. I started raising capital at 27 years old for my first tech
just
company.
Learn from experience.
Just get after it.
Yeah.
Screw up stuff every day.
I remember listening to a fundraising podcast. It was actually an audiobook, and I would walk for miles on the Monon, and it would help give me just the language because I didn't have a formal training in this space, and sometimes you just don't even speak the language.
Right.
So.
Yeah. Yeah. MRR, ARR, ACV.
Right.
Right. Net retention, all that fun stuff.
That.
Which, by the way, the expansion of that one customer helped your net retention for sure.
It did. Yeah, it did.
Okay. So, and were you 100,000 in revenue at that point or less or a little bit more?
I was a little more than that. I was several 100,000 in revenue at that point.
That's really strong. That's really powerful. So total bootstrap, right? For that first year or 18 months, right? To go out there, talk to some customers, get someone to write a check, get a no-code, low-code platform, get something up and running for a prototype. That is awesome. That is brilliant. What I love is those things today, right? If we think about the advancement in these tools, like people can now spool up a prototype for something maybe in the course of a weekend.
I know.
Right? It's
wild.
It's insane.
Yeah.
So, all right. So now you are gaining traction, and so then you go to your Series A. So so what are the differences, like team dynamics? So you go from a few 100,000 to now you're over $1 million probably at that point.
Yeah.
And you go out for a Series A. What are the biggest differences and things that you were asked about or focused on in that first fundraise versus the second fundraise? And what are you dealing with in terms of team dynamics and and customers now pushing back, saying, well, I don't like this one thing. I want you to build this other thing.
Yes. Yeah. All of that. So our Series A it closed in June of 21. And so we were still in the heart of COVID dynamics at that point in time. Our office, we had a little office, but I was the only one that was going into it at that time. We had maybe about 12, 15 people on the team. We were just over 2 million in ARR. And one of the challenges was we had a customer concentration issue, and that was a major topic in the fundraise process.
Yep.
And it's because that one client, decided to scale us across their entire book of business, right? And so it's not that we weren't gaining new clients and they weren't expanding. It's just that first client really expanded.
Yep.
And it's one of those things as a founder, you're like, I thought this was a good problem to have. Yeah, but we need to see diversification. So I remember that being a big theme of the fundraise process, is how we were going to diversify, what specifically we were going to do to grow existing clients that were maybe at a smaller, share than the one client. And so we set about, making that a real priority, and we're able to successfully do that within that first, 12 months after the Series A. I remember our Series Seed lead investors were very helpful in creating a network with Series A level investors. That was really, really helpful. And I really appreciated that from our seed investors. So all in all, I'd probably, of the 3 rounds I've done, I'd say that one was probably the least time consuming, because we had help from our investors. It was 2021.
Yes. Yep.
And so the market dynamics were positive if you were out raising. But I also remember being pushed by some investors that we were pitching to show a higher rate of growth on the forecast.
Yep.
I know we already were projecting to grow by 250%. But I remember But I remember, well, why don't you really, I want to see more of a hockey stick. And I just said, no, I'm not going to, because if I were you, investor, I would want to have a forecast that you could count on.
Yes.
And so that's how I tended to run things. And so I lost some prospective investors because of that. But I gained the ones that believed in how we were going to use the capital. And when it came time to raising again for Series B, that paid off for us.
I love that you push back. I think investors, they can advise or push companies to do things that are unnatural for that unique company. They're not natural in the motion, and it actually becomes detrimental a year or two down the road than being positive. So now you're definitely in the middle of board construction.
Yeah.
So let's talk about board construction. How do you think about that? What is really important to do and not to do, from your perspective as an entrepreneur when you're building your board? What are you looking for? Or people basically saying, I'm writing the biggest check, so I get on your board.
Yeah. Honestly, this is probably the area that I have learned the most from experience and experience alone. When you're raising money and you've never done that before, you kind of are susceptible to being told, like, here's what normal looks like, right? And so it's only through the years that I've realized that I can have more influence in our board construct and the representation around the table than I thought, during Series C and A.
Yep.
And so what I've learned kind of in retrospect is having a diverse group of perspectives is really, really helpful. Investor perspective is very helpful, but so is people who have been true operators in a business. Certainly having industry expertise at the table is helpful. And so over time, I've been able to really work towards making sure that we've got that kind of representation. But in the earlier days, I listened heavily to those that were writing the checks and assumed that's what I was supposed to do.
Yeah. So is your board 5, 7?
5.
5?
Yeah.
I saw on LinkedIn, there's a story about getting passionate. So everybody's passionate, right? The boards and the team, everybody's passionate about growing this incredible company. And you dropped an F-bomb.
Yes. And
someone said, well, you should calm down. I love that, by the way, because sometimes those words are just, they're spirited, right? And show exuberance and passion for what we're trying to do. Talk about that a little bit.
Yes, this was actually early. This was when we were in between our seed and our A. And this wasn't during a board meeting, but it was a meeting between one of my shareholders, a board member, as well as our attorney. And we were talking about the dynamics of raising. And yes, I dropped an F-bomb. And if you talk to any Authenticen today, you'll hear them say, yeah, she does all the time. So what? But I was making a comment around, our strategy, and I just worked it into my sentence as I normally do. And the one shareholder board member said, whoa, you need to calm down and let's not get so emotional. And that did not sit well with me.
Understandably.
So yeah, it's interesting. I've been around corporate cussing all the time, my whole career, and I've never heard the words emotional or calm down said to someone before.
Right,
so anyway, it was a good learning for me on how to handle someone like that. But also, I hope they learned something too.
That's right. Well, they say this too shall pass, right?
Yes.
So okay, so let's bring it home with operations and systems. So as you've matured as a company, anything to share with folks that you've learned, like with the tech stack or with tools that you've used to track data, whether that's from a tech stack standpoint of the product or how you run your business with the various tools. Can you talk about that a little bit on how you think about tracking data and the intersection of that with your finance team and how you leverage that for decision making?
Yes. So when you have a couple years of experience under your belt, I've learned, again, many times the hard way, how important it is to intentionally look at patterns in data. I think as entrepreneurs, we get caught up in the last quarter or one particular number, and sometimes don't zoom out and look at the totality of the different health metrics of our business. And again, in the early stages, it's easy to say, well, I don't have enough data yet to tell a real story about the health of our business. But we've gotten into a practice where we've identified about 20 to 25 metrics that we think are health indicators. Just like when you go to the doctor, I go to the doctor, they're looking at a handful of metrics that kind of tell us something about our health. So we've done that, and it's so incredibly important to look for patterns, seasonal patterns, whether there's particular quarters that you historically don't perform well in, where you look at your go-to-market metrics, looking at your client health and how that might correlate to your net revenue retention. And making connections between those metrics is so, so important. And it kind of reminds me of what our business does, because what we do is we take a seat. Last year we listened to 300 million customer voices, and it can feel overwhelming, but if you zoom out and use AI correctly, you can start to pick up signals and patterns in the data. And that's what we as entrepreneurs should be doing too, and be relentless about understanding the why behind your data points. The data point alone does not tell the story. So you have to have the supporting metrics and conversation with your functional area leaders to really understand the why. And that's how you determine each and every month, quarter, half a year, what levers to pull. It's so important to be intentional about that.
You just made me think of another question. It's slightly unrelated, but it just popped in my mind as you're talking. How do you handle customer success? So there's a selling motion, there's a customer success motion of supporting that customer, and then there's the renewal process, right? Or you have new widgets come out. I'm sorry, the word's escaping my mind, but
features,
products, yeah, new features that come out, and so the upselling process. How do you handle that? Because every company's kind of different, and the motions can be a myriad of different ways. How do you handle that? New customer support, renewal, upselling.
Yes,
where are the boundaries?
Well, what you just described evolves all the time and has evolved over the 6.5 years we've been doing this. And I can describe what it is today, and that is our new business team and our strategic relationship exec team, which are responsible for cross sells and renewals, are all within the revenue team. And then we have a client success team that actually lives within our product management, product innovation group. And we've learned to do a very thorough job in the handoff process between a deal gets done and the client success team. And that involves and includes new feature releases, a communication around that, both systemic, like through kind of marketing emails and that type of thing, but also our CS team goes to the client and makes sure they're educating on what the new features are. This has been an area of the business that is constantly a challenge.
Yep.
And for any other entrepreneur who's challenged with it, believe me, we've probably seen every challenge there is, but we've just gotten much better about intentionally working together. That client relationship is so critical. Them feeling value, we have a speed to value metric, which is how fast is the client getting true insight and value out of the platform from the point at which the contract is signed to the point at which they're actually getting value. And so we measure that. We talk about it every week in our senior leadership meetings. And we, of course, have a client health metric system as well. And we've just learned that tracking your NRR as a metric by itself you're too late.
That's interesting.
You gotta be looking at leading indicators.
Do you start your renewal process officially? You're always renewing in essence because you're supporting,
yes.
But like 4 months, 6 months in advance?
So in the past, when we were doing it wrong, we were starting at 30 days in advance of the renewal, and we screwed up many times. We are selling typically to very large enterprises. So renewals can start as 6 months, sometimes 8 months in advance, especially when those businesses are on pretty robust. And so we start early.
Is your pricing and packaging function, where does that live within the organization?
It lives within our product team with strong, influence and collaboration with our CFO as well as our chief revenue officer.
Yep.
Yeah.
All right, Amy, this has been fascinating. You just gave me chills. I just got chills listening to that story. I just love it. It's so complex, right? And it's so hard, but it's so rewarding, right? Building a business, offering value. So we're entering an exciting moment of the podcast. We're nearing the end. And that exciting moment are rapid fire questions. There's no right or wrong answer here. This is just what's unique to you. It might not even be about your business. The answer might not even be about your business. So we're gonna roll through these. And if you want to pass, we can pass. It's all good. Whatever is unique to you. So the first one is, what is one thing in your industry that you think people should stop doing?
Stop thinking of AI as a replacement of humans and start thinking of it as a tool to elevate the human experience.
I love that. I think that's so true. Oh my gosh, that's so true. AI alone will not replace us, but if we don't embrace it, it will replace us, right? Like
that's right.
It's such a leverage tool. I love that. What is one thing or process or a habit that you think leads to the best ability to disrupt or innovate? So one thing that leads to the ability, back to that, talking about with corporations, et cetera, but how do we enable or allow ourselves to disrupt or innovate?
Yeah. I mean, I think you have to get uncomfortable and you have to delve into that. When we're trying to protect our own ego or our own sense of security, that is anti-innovation. You have to be willing to sacrifice and put yourself out there and be willing to fail. And it is a very scary thing to do that. But you also, in the process, get to learn what you're truly made of. And that can be for individuals. It can also be for entire companies. You have to do that.
Yep. If you could solve one problem in the world with innovation, so if you could solve one problem in the world with innovation, what would that be?
Well, I feel like I have the opportunity to do that right now. I think that humans understanding humans, like if we cannot figure out how to communicate, how to understand each other in a very divisive, very binary world, if we can't figure out how to live in the both and of our world, then we're not getting anywhere as a society. And that's really kind of the essence of our product and what we're trying to do.
Love it. Yeah, we need to figure out how not to bury ourselves in smart devices so early.
I agree. I've got kids. Like, I worry about it.
I'm so with you. Now we're going to opine for a second, but you can't vote till you're 18. You can't drink until you're 21. The human brain, what boys' brains develop at 20 or 25ish and females are 23ish, somewhere in there, early 20s, mid 20s. And we hand them these devices that literally connect them to anything and everything in the world at 3, 4, 5 years old.
That's right.
And they're getting on social media accounts. Now we're sounding like old fuddy-duddies probably.
Yeah.
But it really is scary.
It is. I worry about the human brain.
Yes.
And what we're doing to it. I mean, I was at a AI conference last week and I was asked, tell us your vision for AI. And I was supposed to have ended the whole talk like with something brilliant about AI. And I couldn't help it. I said, you know what? I wish we'd start asking the question, what's going to come of us as humans? What do we want for ourselves? What do we want for our society? And let's build AI to fit that instead of the other way around.
Yes.
And right now, the tail is wagging the dog, on the AI game. And we really need to think about ourselves and our role in all this and then lead, with AI.
We could have a whole other podcast on that topic. I love that. That's so true. What is one thing that you want to share that we haven't talked about today? Something you're passionate about. It could be personal, family, business, anything at all. What did I forget to ask Amy today?
Don't underestimate the power of an office dog. That's what I'm going to say. We have at Authenticx a love of animals of all kind, but we have a chief happiness officer. Her name's Kemi, and she truly brings happiness and joy to every Authentician every day.
That is awesome. What kind of dog is she?
She's a doodle, allergy sensitive at Authenticx. She is a golden doodle, and she is fabulous.
That's amazing. That is amazing. Well, Amy, thank you for joining Innovate or Evaporate. This has been an awesome conversation. I've learned a ton. I love diving into these topics with entrepreneurs, and every time I have these conversations, I learn something new. So Amy Brown, on a mission to help humans understand humans. Authenticx, if you haven't seen it yet, check it out. They are on their way to great things. Thank you so much for joining us, Amy.
It's been great. Thank you.
This episode was brought to you by Rally, the Global Cross-Sector Innovation Conference. Learn more at rallyinnovation.com.